Okay, we're going to look at how do you adjust the midtone area of an image. There is not a specific tool that is designated as midtone, so we kind of have to use a tool that works perfectly fine, but it is not obviously the tool you're supposed to do from its name. So first we're going to hit the Control L. That's the shortcut key to the levels icon, or you can click levels under Edit, Adjustments, and then Levels, or choose Layer, New Adjustment Layer, OK, in the New Layer dialog box. Third choice is usually not what I use, so I wouldn't be terribly concerned. Okay, when you activate the Levels tool, this box will come up. And for this slide, what we want to do is pay attention to that center triangle underneath the histogram. If you take your mouse and grab that triangle and slide it left or right, you will lighten or darken the midtones in your image. So it is probably the most effective tool that I use to, now that I've got my highlights fixed and I got my darks fixed and I want to just kind of brighten up or darken the midtones, then I will hit levels and adjust that box.
Today we're going to be looking at the levels adjustment. So the first thing I'm going to do in Photoshop is add a levels adjustment to this image, and I'm going to use it to explain to you exactly what's going on. So here we've got the level. I'll just move this out so you can see what's happening, and what you can see here is a histogram which is reflecting the image tones, and then we have these three levels. So we've got a black level, a white level, and a grey level. What we've got here is 0 to 255. So 0 represented black and 255 represented white. Now if you look closely at this histogram, you'll see that it doesn't go all the way to where the black level is. Now one of the common adjustments you make with a level is to move that to where it starts to touch the histogram. Now as I do that, you'll see the other histogram up here change so that it becomes more spread out, and you'll see these gaps starting to appear in the histogram itself. Now you'll notice that at this end it now touches the side of the histogram rather than before where there was a small gap. So we're closing that gap. Now the histogram is a picture or a representation of how much of each image tone there is in the image. So in this image we could see that there wasn't any real blacks in the image until we get to a value of 12. And as I move the black slider to the right, you can see the image becoming darker. So without a true black in the image tends to be a little bit washed out maybe. So all I have to do is move the slider over to the right where it gets to the start of the histogram at around 12 as a value. Now if you want to actually see which areas are starting to clip, because that's what you get a clipping if you move the slider too far to the right. So here you can see that basically any image tone that's below 50 now becomes 0 or pure black. So as there are a lot of tones below the value of 50, you can see them in the histogram here, basically now they've all become pure black. Now that's a bad thing, because what it does is it actually causes the detail, the shadow detail in the image to block up and go to pure black, and that starts to make the image look ugly. Now if I hold down the Alt key, as I move this, what you can see is the areas that are beginning to clip. So when I get to a value of around 12, you can see that the areas in the image that are clipping are actually pure shadows. So a value of around 12 is okay. And you can do the same on the other side. So if I take the white level, I can move that over to the left. As I do that, these lighter tones here start to be pushed towards pure white, or a value of 255. If I hold down the Alt key, you can again see which of these areas are starting to clip. Now as I do that, you'll notice that some of the areas appear as colours. And that's because it's that colour channel in the image that's starting to clip. So effectively, what we're seeing here is that as I've moved the channel over to the right, or the level over to the left, what we've got is some red in the image starting to clip. Now what that's telling me is that those areas have reached pure red. Now there may not be any other colour in that area, or there may be some other colour, but that's nowhere near clipping yet. We've then got this central level here, which is the mid-tone level. Now although it shows 1.0, you can think of it as being a gamma adjustment or a brightness adjustment. If I move it over to the right, you can see that the image starts to get darker. If I move it to the left, it gets lighter. If I put it at 1, it has no effect. So watch the histogram. If I move this to the right, the histogram itself moves over to the left. If I move the slider to the left, the histogram moves over to the right. What's happening is the Photoshop software is taking the tones in the image and it's redistributing them across the rest of the histogram. So if I move this to the right, it's taking all the tones that are to the left of this and it's moving them over to the left and redistributing them around this, which is still considered to be my central point or my mid-tone grey. So effectively that's what causes the image to get darker. If I move it over to the left, it causes them to get lighter because all the image tones to the right of this are now bunched into the highlight area. So these tones that we've got here are what are called the input tones. They are the tones of the image that we're adjusting. There are also, though, some output tones, and that is controlled by this slider here. And although we've only looked at using the RGB channel here, what you can do is you can adjust some of the different colour channels. So for example, we could move the red channel over. We can affect the blue and add some real blue in the image. And we can also affect the green as well.
Okay, when you have the levels tool up, you also on the bottom you see a slider called output levels. If you, let's say, slide the white to the left, it will make sure that the brightest part of your image is not white. So if you have a really intense white and you just want to tone it down, you can take that slider and slide it to the left, and that will mean that there is no white in your picture. It will be only as bright as whatever that setting. Also the other side of the game is the black. If you slide that up, that will mean that the darkest part of your picture is no longer black. It's almost black, or it is as gray as you slide that point. Not an adjustment that I make at all that I can remember. So we talked about this earlier. If you take the black point dropper and click on an image, that value and anything darker will become black, and the white point, anything that you click on and brighter becomes white. And the dropper is the color correction. So you're going to call up the student DSC 07251 and see if you can adjust that to best practice.